Good Sunday morning. Well, we had a week of rain. It took 6 days to get less than 1.2 inches, but that brings us to almost 3 inches for the month of June. Today is the 13th, and not any of our doing. This one right here appeared, and then they appeared. There were 3 of them. Now there's only 2. I'm not sure where the other one went. Okay, we're not making much headway. This is sort of the display on the porch anyway, so you can kind of see as I back away that we have, I think I counted 60-something plants up here of all sorts of varieties, and there's some sage and pretty lavender bloom, and I picked that up, and they called it Russian sage. A lot of people call it catmint, and it has sort of a neat smell to it. Some people call it a smoke plant. And there's some lemon verbena, and that's a nice big basil full of holes. Anyway, we caught up on our water collection, and the daylilies are starting to bloom, which those have edible tubers, and I think you can eat the blooms. And the rue has started blooming well. You can see a little bit of bloom on the high mallow over there. Soon they'll open up. I should have cleared this whole thing out and planted peppers in there, and have not done that so far. Yucca bushes will be blooming shortly, and those white creamy colored petals are edible, although they're a little waxy. And into the garden space we go. The lettuce is not looking as good. The far bed will be all pulled up here shortly. 2 weeks ago, or approximately that, I reduced the onions down. I replanted a few. Those, because of the warm temperatures, probably won't do very well. Had some trouble with probably ants. Oh, speaking of ants, look at these guys. They're all over it. Wow. That's not cool. And the spinach was here, and it's been resown. We have some lettuce coming up in the corner there. We've resown that. We'll probably have to shade the whole thing out from the heat. And the lemon balm gets bigger and bigger. And there are some basil plants. I think those are spicy globe. Oh, that smells so good. And we pulled up all the spinach. There's a couple of random flowers still hanging around. The sage with the catnip in the backdrop. You can see that the mustard greens have gotten very tall. I'll go to the shade. I see a couple of bugs, even though I dusted last night after our last rain. That was quite a windy storm, but not much rain for here. But anyway, these mustard greens are gonna be pulled up soon, probably a week or 10 days at the most. And where the radishes were and I resowed beans, we have green beans coming up. They're a little skinny on that row, but you'd be surprised at how much beans that just those few plants would make. Got to take the garlic out. Got some color in the bloom finally. There's another one trying to shed its sheath. And I've harvested some out of here. Got a lot of scapes. The chard doesn't look as good. It's been picked heavily on. It's Sunday, so we picked on Friday. And I thinned out some of the purple ruffles. It's good ground cover for holding the moisture in. Okay, so as the weather gets warmer, the cooler season stuff starts to play out. It's a little more of a struggle than it was a few weeks ago. I mentioned the pennyroyal growing as a ground cover. Here it is. It's got a little bit of dust on there, but this smells real good. It also works as a pest deterrent. Again, mint family. I got my ears lowered this week. So you can see that I'm really here, and not just a shadow. I put a little dust on those. The peppers are getting some size on them. Very difficult. It's a very sunny look to see what's actually showing up on the camera. So just do the best I can. I got to mow, but it rained for 6 days, so the yard is too tall, and these guys are up. I'm trying something different. I'm going to try to stake up most of my squash in an effort to be able to stay on top of the squash bug situation better, because they do get bad. You can look for on the leaves little clusters of bronze colored eggs, and if you see those, remove them and squash them. I watch them about every day. That one's finally getting sort of its acorn look to it, and so the squash is looking pretty good. I got all this hoed before the rain came, and these are unique spaghetti squash. That'll end up being like over a pound is their harvest size. So they're probably about 6 inches long, maybe 8. They're sort of like a mini specialty spaghetti squash. And I left some purple ruffle basil where some squash didn't come up. And there's yellow patty pan. They're small, but we've got a few on. Through the squash patch. And these are more yellow patty pans, so from a distance actually you can kind of tell that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 rows of the yellow patty pan. There's 2 rows of the unique, and then the acorns are on the end. This is the 8-ball zucchini. This is the regular zucchini. And there's an 8-ball. If you can see that. I'll find another one. There's one right there. And I typically come in and try to remove dead blooms. As you can see, those will get icky and cause mold and stuff. So in squash season, it's typical to come in. Sometimes they don't come loose. You have to wait for them to be loose enough to remove, but it's better to remove those so they don't rot the end of the squash, especially in wet weather. All right, and the tomatoes still need a bunch of work. Oh my. I can't get in my own fence today. Too many weeds, but we had 18 days of dry weather in the month of May, and I didn't want to remove anything to cause the plants to dry out. The weeds actually help to retain moisture. There's several early girls and more. That one's got a little more size on it. I feel like we're ahead of the game for the well, now middle of June, we have a lot of tomatoes on. And these are mostly early girls, and you can tell by the way that their habit is. They're growing all over the place. They're indeterminates. And I need to, you can maybe tell I cleared most of the weeds out of that row. But I haven't really gotten in there because that storm blew up last night, yesterday evening. Here's a nice, good-sized tomato there. And another one. And there's a cluster of them. That's going to be a different variety. I'm thinking that's lemon boys. They look awfully green, though, for lemon boys. Usually they're lighter in color. There's a whole cluster of tomatoes in there. One blooms all over the place. Everything will need to be fed again, probably in conjunction with the next rain. This evening when it cools off, I'll get out here and do some more weeding. It dries out a couple of days, then I'll be able to run the tiller, and that'll be good. I wanted to find that bigger tomato. I have one that's really good size. Here it is. I can't even see that. That one. That's a beefsteak type tomato. And that's a pretty good size one there too. And all my supports haven't worked stupendously, but they have worked. And the squash, that's regular yellow squash. And then the cucumbers, it took them forever. We planted those by seed in late April and it's mid-June. But they usually do take a while. But we can see that we have yellow squash coming on. And those are the cucumbers that I grew in 6-packs that I put in place of some that didn't come up. And they're already blooming. Wonder if I can find a little cucumber anywhere. No. And the weed patch with the blooming yarrow. And these back here, this is a different variety. The ones we've been looking at were straight 8. These are Boston picklers, I think is what they are. So, the winter stuff is giving out. The summer stuff is starting to produce. Looks like my apple tree will actually produce a few apples this year. Not a lot, maybe 20. Should do better than that. But I'm not going to go to the greenhouse today because really the greenhouse is about over and done with mid-June. Plant sales drop off by the end of June pretty dramatically. We have a few coleus and a few impatiens left. Maybe 100 pepper plants. A few tomatoes. And a number of herbs. The perennials will typically sell. And let's see, there's some grape pods. This looks like it's going to make, look how that's expanded. That's probably 10 feet across and 8 feet deep and 7 feet high. The blackberries are showing. You guys be careful of snakes. I stepped over about a 4-foot copperhead the other day. I had some big stones handy, so I crushed them. But that's poke. When they're young and tender, the old folks like to double boil them or whatever it is they do. You can kind of see the pond is back there. And the broccoli in all the rain has gone awry. The cabbage worms, I mean, we picked a number of heads off of it, but the cabbage worms have had a heyday. You can't hardly keep it sprayed or dusted when it rains every single day. Potato tires are doing pretty good. There's a bloom. I probably will not add another layer of tires, but I will stuff some more straw in there. It'll be very interesting in September to see what those have done. All this contraption stuff is to try to keep the deer away. And the back garden, which I haven't shown before, a little shady this time of the day, I added 14 peppers, a dozen tomatoes. There's a stand of beans with all the leaves that blew down from the storm. It's hard to see them, but there's some green beans that have come up out there. And in the distance, there are peas and okra. On the right there, that big bush, that's all blackberries. There's a blackberry sticking out into the path. So, kind of give you an idea of what's going on. It's the middle of June, it's the 13th. Tomorrow's Flag Day. And I think that's going to about cover it for the moment. Appreciate y'all tuning in. I only went 16 minutes today skipping the greenhouse. Maybe next time I'll go and show my celery. It's gotten about 8 inches tall. And I've added some more to the collection. So I think that my growing them in planters of water is going to work well. Happy gardening.